The world was ending, and nobody knew it yet. Deep beneath the frozen mountains of Eastern Europe, something ancient was waking up. Krampus had slept for centuries, locked away in chains forged by old magic and human prayers. But the chains were breaking now, crack by crack. Link by link, the dark thing was pulling free from its prison. The creature of pure shadow and hunger stretched its claws and felt the cold air of the world above touching its skin for the first time in 300 years. The night sky turned darker when Krampus rose. Darker than it should have been in early December. The stars seemed to fade, and the moon looked sickly green across the continents. Animals began running mad. Wolves howled without stopping. Dogs refused to go outside at night. Birds flew away in great clouds, leaving entire regions silent and strange. Something was wrong with the world, but people did not understand what it was. Yet Lucia stood in the penthouse of a tall building in Manhattan and watched the city lights flicker. Strange things were happening. To the electricity, the power would spike and then drop. Spike and drop, in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. She had lived for 3,000 years as she recognized this feeling. It was the feeling of a very old evil. Waking up, she was a vampire princess. Though no one called her that anymore, she had chosen to live alone. Hidden among the humans who died so quickly, they barely seemed real to her. For 200 years, she had not drunk human blood. She kept only the blood of animals, sealed in special containers in a hidden room at the bottom of her building. It was harder that way. Much harder, but she had made a promise to herself long ago that she would not be a monster anymore. Lucia turned from the window and looked at the television. She watched the news anchor talking about the strange phenomena happening around the world: power outages in Russia and Romania, unexplained animal deaths, people reporting nightmares so vivid they could not wake up for hours. The news anchor smiled and tried to make it all sound normal, but Lucia could see the fear in her eyes. Humans always showed their fear in their eyes. She opened her phone and called someone she had not spoken to in 5 years. Her name was Monica, and she was a human with the gift of sensing spiritual presences. Monica answered on the first ring, which meant she was already expecting the call. Monica, something is coming, Lucia said into the phone. I know, Monica replied, her voice steady but tight. I can feel it like a shadow on the edge of my mind. There was silence between them. It is very old, Lucia said, and it is very hungry. Monica made a small sound of agreement and hung up the phone. 1,000 miles away in a small town in Vermont, Jack had been having the most terrible dreams of his life. For 3 weeks now, the nightmares had been getting worse. Every night he would see things that made no sense to his waking mind. Dark shapes that were not quite shapes. Voices that spoke in languages he did not know, and a feeling of cold that went deeper than any winter could reach. He would wake up screaming, and his hands would be burning hot, leaving marks on his sheets. Jack was a mechanic by trade. He worked at a garage fixing cars and trucks, and it was honest work that he enjoyed. But something was changing inside him. His skin had started to feel like it was holding back. Something very hot. His eyes sometimes turned gold when he looked in the mirror, just for a second, then returned to normal brown on this particular night. Jack was working late at the garage trying to fix an old truck engine. The radio was playing soft music and the garage was quiet around him when he heard the sound. It was like breaking glass, but deeper. Like reality itself was cracking. Jack dropped his wrench and ran outside. The sky above his town was wrong. The stars were going out one by one, and something was pushing through from the other side. Something dark and enormous. Jack could not see it exactly, but he could feel it, could sense it the way you can sense someone looking at you in a dark room. His hands started burning. He ran. He did not know where he was running, but his feet moved on their own, carrying him down empty roads toward the center of town. The heat in his hands grew so intense that he thought his skin would melt, but it did not. The burning was becoming clearer, more focused, like a fire trying to take shape. Jack found himself in the old cemetery on the edge of town, and that was when he saw her. The woman was standing in the middle of the cemetery, and she was surrounded by shadow creatures, things made of smoke and hunger, that were trying to reach her. She was fighting them, but she was also bleeding. Dark blood that steamed in the cold night air. Without thinking, Jack raised his hands, and something incredible happened. Fire erupted from his palms. Not ordinary fire, but something golden and pure and ancient. The creatures made of shadow screamed, a sound that hurt his ears, and they scattered like smoke and wind. The woman fell to her knees and looked at him with eyes that were perfectly red. "What are you?" she asked. Jack did not know how to answer. He was still staring at his own hands, which were glowing with golden light that felt like it came from somewhere deep inside him. Somewhere he did not know existed until tonight. "I don't know," he said, and his voice shook. The woman stood up slowly. She was very beautiful, but there was something dangerous about her. Something that told Jack that she was not human and never had been. "My name is Lucia," she said, "and I think you just saved my life." Jack let the fire in his hands fade. The glow faded with it, and darkness returned to the cemetery. "We need to talk about what you are," Lucia said, "and about what is coming toward us from the north. Because if I am right, that fire in your hands is the only thing in this world that can kill what is waking up." Jack wanted to ask what was waking up. He wanted to demand answers and explanations, but he was looking at Lucia, and he was starting to understand that his entire life had just changed in a single moment, that his small town and his simple job and his normal existence were all gone now, replaced by something much bigger and much more dangerous. "Come with me," Lucia said. Extending her hand, Jack took it, and her skin was cold, but not dead cold. It was the cold of something that had lived for a very long time. They walked out of the cemetery together as the sky above them continued to grow darker, and something ancient and terrible moved closer to the world of humans with each passing moment. The war between light and dark was about to begin, and they would be standing in the middle of it, whether they wanted to be there or not. Lucia took Jack to a warehouse outside the city, a place that looked empty and abandoned from the outside, but held secrets behind its broken walls. When they entered, Jack realized the inside was far larger than the outside should have allowed. There were rooms that went deeper into the earth, rooms filled with books and old maps and weapons from centuries past. "This place has been hidden for a very long time," Lucia explained as they walked through narrow corridors lit by electric lights that seemed to be powered by something other than normal electricity. Humans have always had to fight against things they did not understand, and some humans built these sanctuaries to store knowledge and prepare for moments like this. In the main chamber, Jack met the others. Monica was there, a woman with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right through people. David was a tall man with shoulders broad as a doorway, and when he shook Jack's hand, the strength in his grip was almost impossible. Kevin was younger, maybe only 30, with glasses and nervous energy that made him tap his fingers constantly against his leg. "Kevin is a scientist," Lucia said. "He studies things that most scientists refuse to acknowledge." Monica can sense spiritual presences that most humans cannot feel. "And David comes from a line of warriors so old that nobody remembers when his family stopped being fully human." Jack looked at each of them in turn, trying to understand what he was part of. "Now we have been watching you for some time," Lucia said to Jack. "Your gifts did not manifest all at once. They have been growing slowly, building inside you. This is common for humans like you, humans born with hellfire in their veins. You are rare and precious and very, very dangerous." "Why didn't you come find me earlier?" Jack asked. "If you knew what I was." "Because we needed to be certain," David said, his voice like gravel and thunder. "We have seen false positives before. We have trained humans who had only fragments of power. Humans who thought they were special, but turned out to be something else entirely. We had to be sure you were real, and that your awakening would be genuine. And now," Kevin added, adjusting his glasses nervously, Something else is happening, something much bigger than one man's training. Krampus is rising, and that changes everything over the next 2 hours. They explained to Jack what was happening. Krampus was not a legend or a fairy tale. He was real. Something that had been real for thousands of years, a creature born from human fear and winter darkness. Something that grew stronger the more people believed in it and feared it in ancient times. He had been worshipped in twisted ways, fed with sacrifices and belief, until powerful people had finally managed to lock him away. But the locks were weakening. The world had forgotten him for so long that some of the bindings had broken when Krampus breaks free completely. Lucia said, "He will bring an army with him, an army of shadow creatures. Beings made from fear itself. These creatures feed on human despair. They are invisible to ordinary humans. Or rather, humans can see them, but their minds refuse to accept that they exist. So humans forget the moment they look away." David showed Jack maps of where Krampus might move. How would we even fight something invisible? Jack asked you would not fight it alone. Monica said, her voice strange and distant. Like she was hearing something Jack could not hear. You would fight it with Lucia's magic and with Kevin's science and with David's strength and with the one thing that Krampus fears most. What is that? Jack wanted to know human hope, Kevin said, and everyone turned to look at him. He had been quiet until now. But now his words came fast and excited. I found references in old texts, in thousands of ancient documents from different cultures. All of them say the same thing: fear creatures like Krampus cannot exist where there is genuine hope and unity among humans. The more humans work together, the more they believe in each other, the stronger the barrier becomes against creatures of despair. This is the only advantage we have. Lucia explained Monica cannot turn into a giant monster. She cannot live for thousands of years. You humans are limited, but you have something that we do not. You have the ability to choose hope even when everything seems hopeless. You have the ability to inspire each other. This is why Krampus fears humans more than he fears any vampire or supernatural being over the next weeks. Jack's training began. Lucia taught him to control the Hellfire in his hands, to make it burn hotter and colder, to focus it into shapes and weapons that could cut through darkness. David taught him to fight, to move with purpose and strength. Though Jack would never be as strong as David was, Monica worked with him to see the spirit world more clearly, to perceive the creatures of shadow and understand their nature. Kevin filled Jack's head with science and theory, explaining how ancient magic and modern physics were not as different as people thought. But as Jack grew stronger, a terrible realization began to form in his mind. The five of them, even with all their power and knowledge, were not enough to stop an army. This was an impossible task, and they all knew it one night. Jack stood on the roof of the warehouse and looked at the sky, which was still growing. Dr. Lucia found him there. "We cannot win," Jack said. "Not even close, that is correct," Lucia agreed. And she stood beside him, looking out at the world below. The city lights that seemed so fragile against the growing darkness. "So what do we do?" Jack asked. "We tell the truth," Lucia said. And she turned to look at him with those ancient red eyes. "We tell humanity what is coming." Jack stared at her. "You would reveal yourself," he said. "All of this, everything you have kept hidden for thousands of years. If we do not," Lucia said, "humanity will be destroyed anyway, at least with the truth. They have a chance to fight back. They have a chance to choose hope instead of despair." It was crazy. It was impossible. It would change everything. But as Jack thought about it, he realized that Lucia was right. The only way to fight a creature of despair was to show the world that humanity had not given up, that humanity was willing to stand and fight and believe in something better. "We start tomorrow," Jack said. "Yes," Lucia agreed. "We start tomorrow, and we hope that humans are as strong as they believe they are." because everything depends on it. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning. Jack and Lucia stood together on a live broadcast that was watched by more than 1 billion people around the world. They did not ask permission first. They simply took over every television station and every internet connection they could access through Kevin's mysterious technical skills. "What you are about to hear sounds impossible," Lucia said, and Jack could see the fear in her ancient eyes, even though she kept her voice calm and steady. "But it is the truth, and you deserve to know the truth before it is too late." She told them everything. She explained what Krampus was, where he was coming from, what his army would do. She showed images gathered from spiritual sources, images of the shadow creatures and what they looked like to those who could perceive them. She held nothing back for the first 3 hours after the broadcast. There was chaos on the news channels. Experts argued about whether it was a hoax or a coordinated terrorist attack. Some people laughed, thinking it was some kind of elaborate joke. Other people panicked, rushing to stores to buy supplies and weapons that would be useless against creatures of pure shadow. But then something interesting began to happen in small towns and big cities. Groups of people gathered together. The news was spreading, and people were reacting not with despair, but with stubborn determination. If there was a threat coming, then they would prepare for it together in New York. People began organizing volunteer groups in London. Churches and synagogues and mosques opened their doors, and people came together regardless of their faith. In Tokyo, community leaders started meetings about how to prepare in South Africa and Brazil and India and everywhere in between. Humans were choosing to stand together instead of running. Kevin had predicted this with surprising accuracy. Though even he seemed surprised by how quickly it happened. Human psychology is interesting. He told Jack, when people have a real enemy, a true existential threat, they stop fighting each other so much. You give them a focus, and they unite around it. Monica received calls from other people like her, humans with abilities she never knew existed, sensitives and healers and gifted individuals who had been hiding their whole lives, suddenly realizing that now was the time to step forward and use their gifts. A woman in California could sense emotions from miles away. A man in Germany could help people remember things they had forgotten. A child in Australia had the power to calm any animal. A farmer in Kansas could make things grow impossibly fast. These people came to the warehouse. They came because they understood that their gifts were meant for a moment like this. Lucia kept track of them in a notebook. Hundreds and then thousands of gifted humans who wanted to help, who wanted to stand. But it was what the ordinary humans did that amazed everyone. Most artists began creating murals on every available wall. Huge images of light and hope and defiance. Musicians gathered in parks and played music, crowds singing together, their voices rising in the darkness. Runners organized relay events carrying torches through the night, keeping fires burning continuously. Volunteers built shelters and stockpiled food and medicine, not just for the crisis, but to show that they believed in a future worth protecting. In a small town in Ohio, a group of people gathered every night to tell stories of kindness and resilience, sharing histories of humans who had overcome impossible odds. A grandmother in Nebraska made quilts that she distributed to people in other countries, stitching hope into every thread. A young girl in Portugal started a global movement where people were asked to perform one act of genuine kindness each day. Jack watched all of this happening through the internet and through reports from David and Monica, who traveled to different cities to observe and help. A wave of human courage was spreading across the world. Not the courage of weapons or armies, but the courage of ordinary people choosing to believe in each other and in a better tomorrow. 2 weeks before the expected arrival of Krampus's army, something unexpected happened. Monica called an emergency meeting at the warehouse. She had discovered something crucial while observing the global movement of human unity. "The barrier is real," she said, her voice shaking with excitement. "I can see it now, I can feel it. It is invisible, but it is there, spreading across the world like a web. Every time a human makes a choice to show kindness, to stay hopeful, to believe in each other, the barrier gets stronger." David and Kevin began measuring the effect. The barrier was growing quantifiably, in ways that should have been impossible. Lucia sat quietly, watching it all happen. And Jack realized she was smiling. That was when he understood something that the others were only beginning to grasp. This was going to work. Jack said aloud. Lucia nodded, and for the first time in 3,000 years, she had genuine hope that something different might happen. That maybe, just maybe, humans were the secret weapon against despair. All along, the night sky was still dark, but the stars were beginning to glow with a strange new light, as if even the universe was holding its breath to see what would happen next. The darkest night of winter arrived, and the world held its breath. Krampus erupted from beneath the mountains with a force that shook the earth. Mountains crumbled and glaciers collapsed as the creature pulled itself free from its ancient prison at last. It was awake. It was hungry. It was ready to feed on the despair and fear of an entire world. But it found something different than it expected. Instead of screaming in terror, instead of running in panic, humans stood together across every continent. In every city and town and village, billions of people gathered in groups. Fires burned in the darkness, not the fires of destruction, but the fires of hope. They lit torches and candles. They gathered in parks and streets. They sang to each other and held hands and spoke of all the reasons why tomorrow was worth fighting for. Krampus's shadow army descended like a plague of locusts. But the barrier that Monica had discovered held firm where humans stood united and hopeful. The creatures of darkness could not penetrate shadows, crashed against the light of human belief, and shattered like glass. Jack stood in a stadium in the center of North America with Lucia beside him and David and Kevin and Monica forming a circle around him as Krampus drew near, its form becoming visible, a towering shape of horns and teeth and ancient hunger that blotted out the sky. Jack raised his hands. The Hellfire came easily now, burning not with anger but with purpose. The golden flames erupted from his palms and shot upward toward the massive creature. Lucia added her power to his. Ancient magic flowing through her ancient body power accumulated in the space between human determination and supernatural strength. Across the world, it was happening in similar ways in similar moments. In Tokyo, a young sensitive was working with thousands of people to maintain the barrier, their collective hope flowing through her and outward. In London, a healer and a warrior bloodline descendant were combining their gifts to push back the shadows. In Sao Paulo, artists and ordinary citizens were creating new art, even as the battle raged around them. Refusing to let the darkness consume beauty, Kevin was doing something that should have been impossible, combining ancient spiritual wards with modern technology. He had created a network that let the gifted humans all over the world feel the unity of what was happening. It was like plugging millions of minds together, showing each human that they were not alone, that billions of others were standing in the darkness with them, holding on to hope. Monica's voice came through the network, calm and clear. "Hold the line. Everyone hold the line. We are stronger than fear." David moved through the crowd, his strength amplified by the collective hope of the millions around him. He could move things that should have been immovable. He could strike with power that would have been impossible for a normal human, because he was carrying the strength of not just himself, but of the determination of countless others. Krampus tried to destroy Jack. It threw darkness at him like spears. It tried to crush his mind with ancient hunger and primal fear. But every time it attacked, something unexpected happened. The Hellfire burned stronger because billions of humans on the other side of the world chose hope. At that exact moment, every act of kindness happening in shelters and hospitals and homes became fuel for Jack's power. Every choice to stay human and caring and loving became another log for the fire. Lucia moved forward and spoke in a language so old that few beings still remembered it. She was calling on the ancient pacts that had bound Krampus in the first place, awakening magic that had been sleeping since before human civilization rose. She was reminding the creature that it had been defeated once and could be defeated again. The turning point came when Jack understood something crucial. He stopped trying to destroy Krampus with overwhelming force. He stopped trying to burn away the darkness with pure power. Instead, he did something different. He used the Hellfire to isolate the creature, to sever its connection to human fear, because Krampus was not alive in the way that living things were alive. It did not breathe or eat or need oxygen. It existed because humans fed it with despair and terror. But a world full of determined humans choosing hope. Every moment was a world in which Krampus was starving. Jack and Lucia worked together, and instead of fighting Krampus, they fought the fear itself. They pushed back against the despair and the darkness and the ancient hunger that had sustained the creature for millennia. They replaced it with something simple and revolutionary. They replaced it with the knowledge that humans were worth saving in that moment. With the combined willpower of billions of people standing together, choosing light over darkness and hope over despair, the connection between Krampus and the human world was severed. The ancient creature let out a scream that echoed across dimensions, and then it was gone, not dead. Because something like Krampus could not truly die, but banished, sent back beyond the place where human belief could reach it, locked away once more, but this time not by magic or force, but by the simple, overwhelming power of human hope and human unity. The shadow army dissolved. The darkness began to recede. The night did not become day. But the quality of the darkness changed. It was no longer hostile. It was no longer hungry. It was just night. As night should be. Jack fell to his knees. Exhausted, Lucia caught him before he fell completely, her ancient strength holding him up. A cheer rose from the stadium. Not a cheer of violence, but a cheer of relief and joy and profound gratitude that they had survived, that they had won not through superior strength, but through choosing to believe in each other. The sunrise after Krampus's defeat was the most beautiful sunrise anyone had ever seen, not because anything was physically different, but because millions of people had stayed awake all night, had held on to each other in that darkness, and now watched the sun return as proof that they had made it, that they had survived, that their hope had been enough. Jack and Lucia stood on the roof of the stadium as the sun climbed above the horizon. The golden light painted everything in shades of amber and crimson. Lucia took off her sunglasses, something she had worn for hundreds of years, and let the actual sunlight touch her face for the first time in millennia. She did not burn. She did not scream. She did not have to hide. Something has changed in the world, Jack said, and it was not just about Krampus being gone. Yes, Lucia agreed, her ancient red eyes reflecting the morning light. Everything has changed. In the days and weeks that followed, governments began having conversations they had avoided for centuries. They acknowledged that the supernatural world was real, and it always had been. A United Nations summit was called to discuss how human and supernatural beings could coexist. A historic agreement was drafted, the Covenant of Unity, which gave both humans and supernatural beings official recognition and protection under law. Lucia became an ambassador between worlds. No longer hiding what she was, she gave interviews and speeches, telling humanity about the long history of supernatural beings living among them. She spoke of ancient wars they never knew about, and alliances that had been secretly protecting civilization for thousands of years. Her presence alone changed how people thought about things. For 3,000 years, she had been alone. And now suddenly the world wanted to listen to her. Jack became the first official human diplomat to the supernatural realms, a position that did not exist before, but now seemed obvious. That somehow a human who could burn with hellfire and had stood side by side with creatures of myth, A human who had learned from a vampire and a warrior bloodline, and a spiritual sensitive and a brilliant scientist, should be the bridge between two worlds. Kevin's technology became the foundation for something entirely new. He worked openly with immortal beings who understood science in ways humans could not. He combined ancient knowledge with modern technology and created things that benefited both worlds. He published papers that rewrote everything humanity thought they knew about physics and magic. He discovered they were not different things. They were just different ways of understanding the same fundamental forces of reality. Monica became the director of a new organization dedicated to finding and training other gifted humans all over the world. People with abilities began stepping forward. Children who could sense the truth began being taught to use their gifts properly instead of hiding them. A young girl in Morocco who could heal wounds discovered that her power worked on both humans and supernatural beings. A boy in Iceland who could see auras was trained to help diagnose problems that ordinary medicine could not. A woman in Peru who could speak to animals became the first ambassador to the wild creatures that shared the earth. David took on a role that might have seemed impossible to him even a year before. He became a teacher. He traveled to schools and communities and taught humans about their own capabilities. He showed them that they did not need magical powers to be strong. They did not need to be immortal to matter. Their strength was already there, in their ability to choose compassion even when it was difficult, to stand together even when it was scary, to believe in each other even when darkness seemed overwhelming. Lucia and Jack sat together in a garden. 6 months after the battle, the garden was in a place that had once been a secret sanctuary, now open to both humans and supernatural beings. It was beautiful, with flowers that bloomed in impossible colors and trees that seemed to remember. When the world was young, I've been thinking, Lucia said, about what truly changed when we fought Krampus. What was that? Jack asked. He was a creature of despair, she said, and we defeated him not with superior force but with hope. But it took more than magic. It took something unique to your kind, your ability to choose meaning even when you cannot see the outcome, your ability to care about each other even when you yourselves are suffering, your ability to create beauty and joy even in the darkest times. That is what made the difference, Jack said, understanding now. Yes, Lucia continued. Krampus was ancient and powerful, but he understood only fear. He understood hunger and darkness, but he could never understand what humans understood, that suffering does not have to lead to despair, that difficulty does not have to lead to cruelty, that darkness does not have to lead to the end. In the year that followed, the world continued to change. Education systems began teaching the true history of the planet, the history that included supernatural beings and secret wars and alliances forged in ancient times. Humans and supernatural beings worked together on problems that neither could have solved alone. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries began to disappear because immortal researchers finally shared their accumulated knowledge. Communities became safer because werewolves and other creatures openly guarded neighborhoods at night in exchange for acceptance and protection. But the most profound change was something quieter. It was the knowledge that spread through human consciousness that they were not weak, they were not insignificant, they were not victims waiting to be saved by more powerful beings. They'd always possessed something precious, something that no amount of magic or immortality could grant. You could not buy it. You could not steal it. You could not inherit it. You could only choose it every single day. The choice to hold on to hope. The choice to believe in something better. The choice to stand with other humans and say together, we will not despair. We will not surrender. We will not give up, even if the darkness seems overwhelming. Jack and Lucia watched as a group of humans and supernatural beings worked together in the garden, building something new. Both kinds of beings laughing together, sharing their knowledge, creating something that had never existed before, a world where two kinds of consciousness could live together. could learn from each other, could help each other become something greater than they could ever be alone. The outcome that changed the world was not what anyone expected. Not a single warrior defeating an army, not a magic spell more powerful than all others, not a chosen one born with impossible gifts. It was billions of ordinary people choosing to believe in each other, choosing to stand together, choosing to hold on to hope. And it turned out that was the most powerful force that existed anywhere in the universe.